Hi, I'm Daniel Melrose. I'm an attorney here at the Berman Law Group. I handle the property damage claims as a result of Hurricane Ian. First of all, we want to reach out to everyone that's been affected by this and just say how terribly sorry we are for everything you guys are going through. I was over in Fort Myers this week and spoke with many families that have lost everything, and they're living out of hotels day by day, not knowing what's next. So for today, we just wanted to sit down with an engineer and kind of go over some of the hidden damages that your property may have experienced. To my left here is Patrick Pearson. He's an engineer. And we're going to talk a little bit about hidden damages. Patrick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, folks. Patrick Pearson. As Daniel said, I'm an engineer. We've worked together on building damage claims in the past. Where we've acted as the engineers, we've acted in a capacity to do forensic evaluations of the buildings. And basically what we do is we investigate what the damages are with the buildings. We come up with schedules of these damages, and we help the folks that are putting the claims together to determine what it is that they should have in their claims. Oftentimes, as you know, we'll find things that nobody's looking for. There's hidden damage out there behind stucco elements. You've got maybe some concrete that's damaged. You've got a lot of damage to your coatings, waterproofing systems that aren't evident during the storm. You have a lot of dynamic movement of the buildings.
Yes, today let's talk primarily about windows and then the roof systems of
Windows
these
and
buildings.
roofs, yeah.
And the reason why this is important and to understand why we're even talking about hidden damages today is insurance policies require you to provide a complete inventory of your damage to your insurance company so they can make a determination as to coverage for those items. The burden, unfortunately, is on the insured to do this. And in doing it, you have to have a team of professionals come in and perform a very thorough inspection. So today, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the window systems and primarily the roof systems as well as concrete. Those three areas to just touch on briefly, hidden damages that could be found there. We'll start with the roof. On roof systems, what are some of the hidden damages that a building owner should be aware of?
Well, oftentimes what happens to a roof during a hurricane is you get uplift forces that lift the roofing membrane up. So you get, you lose your bond of your roofing system.
Sure.
In addition to leaks that become evident during the storm and shortly after, you could have much more extensive damage to your roof. So, there is some testing that we do depending on what we see and what we think we're going to find. There are some test methods to test for the uplift force required to lift the roof up, which shows you basically if you're despondent or not. We look for openings in the roofing systems at the flashings. Oftentimes you will get permanent damage to your roofs. Of course, we're not talking about a building here where the roof has completely come off. Absolutely. We're talking about a building that may appear as though the roof is still intact. Maybe they had some partial leaks and what have you. But oftentimes you'll find that you've got permanent damage to your roof. And the same applies to the facades of the building, whether it's a wood frame building, a concrete building, it could even be metal elements.
Absolutely.
And your windows as well.
So sticking with the roof just briefly, some of the tests that we've done in the past is we'll actually do a core sample of the roof. Mm-hmm. So why do we do that?
Well, a core sample will show you what you've got. So, basically you can look for water intrusion. You can use for disbonded layers and disbonded insulation. It just shows you what you have.
Absolutely. Now moving over to the windows, what we'll preface this with is during the storms, especially on buildings 6 stories and higher, when they're hit with these high winds and the winds increase as the elevation increases, the buildings will actually start swaying. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what fenestrations are and how that gets impacted when these buildings sway?
Sure, Daniel. Well, so a fenestration opening is basically a sliding glass door, a window wall, a window opening, a door opening, right? So we've got tons of those on these buildings, and they are a common failure point. That's where your water comes in, whether it's around the perimeter of the fenestration opening, the window and door, or it's the intermediate elements, the glass to metal joints, the metal to metal joints. There's just so many potential failure points there, and oftentimes during a storm, as you said, we've had residents report to us that they saw water moving in their bathtubs during the storm. The building was really moving. Once again, these things are not meant to move. They do not react well to movement. So there will be damage to these window systems that continues for years and years. They're basically impacted for life. It's permanent damage that may not be immediately apparent to people. And it's important that you have your experts conduct a very thorough set of forensic investigations.
Sure. So like with the roof, we did core sampling for the roof to determine the moisture levels. Mm-hmm. Some of the testing we do for windows to determine if there's leaks and window-created openings is something called ESTM 1105. Mm-hmm. It's a chamber test. So why don't you explain a little bit about that test and what we're looking for when we do it?
Right. Well, at the end of the day, these tests are looking to see if water comes through under a certain amount of pressure.
Sure.
And there are some criteria in the various codes and testing methods that establish, at what pressures you would expect to see water come through. And that's what these chamber tests do. And they are very involved. They're typically done on maybe one or two openings or some statistically significant number of openings for a building, because we deal with larger buildings with many of these fenestration openings. And you can establish based on that the modality of failure that you have for the entire building. So basically, once again, it's going to come in through the perimeter. It's going to come in through the intermediate joints, through some of the mechanical.
And not to cut you off, but for our listeners, during this ESTM 1105 test, we're actually spraying water on the outside of the building at the windows. And then there's a chamber built on the inside to have pressure by, essentially, it's like a vacuum almost. And
it is.
Yeah, and it simulates that. So if there is water coming in during this testing, then it's evident that happened during the hurricane.
Well, yeah, you just get a lot of damage that just isn't apparent, right, to the naked eye.
Sure.
And you really have to put water on it and pressure on it to see it come through.
Absolutely. Now, if we move to concrete, a lot of these buildings have a significant amount of concrete on the exterior sides. What are some of the things that a property owner needs to be aware of with their concrete, and how to test for water intrusion into that concrete that could create problems later on?
Well, for concrete buildings have stucco, and what happens is when the buildings move, you get, once again, I'm going to talk to you about the stiffness differential between different elements, right? So your wall is very stiff, your stucco is maybe not as stiff, but you want it bonded to your wall. And when the whole thing moves, because of the different stiffness, you get different movement in the structural element than you do in the covering, which is the stucco in this case. And so you get disbondment and you get cracks. And these cracks, you may have tiny, tiny fissures that are even microscopic in nature, but they're there. And over time, they will open up more and they will let water in. And water will seep into your building and it will create all sorts of damage to your building. So to answer your question, what you want to look for, what may be immediately apparent is you may see black marks, you may see cracks. You'll see black marks are from from water getting into tiny cracks, and then mold forming. You'll see black. You'll also see paint blisters, delaminated paint. Sometimes you'll see, as we've seen with some coated metal parts like handrails and windows. We've
Sure.
seen sandblasting in the past.
Sure.
So those are some of the things to look for. But I think it's important to remember that there's a lot more damage usually than the naked eye can see.
Absolutely.
Or the untrained eye, I should say.
And if the concrete on the exterior of a building is delaminating and you identify that, does it have to be repaired?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this becomes a waterproofing issue mostly.
Sure.
So you want to limit water going in because concrete is reinforced with steel. Steel doesn't like water. Well, nothing likes water, really. Water being the universal solvent, it dissolves anything.
Absolutely.
Over enough time, it will deteriorate just about anything. So, yeah, you want to fix any loose stucco, any paint issues. That's a waterproofing issue. in addition to the damage that's going to occur over time if you let the water continue to come into your structural elements.
Absolutely. So thank you, Patrick, for
You're
your
welcome.
time today. Patrick is an engineer here in Broward County, Florida, and we travel all over the state for the property damage claims. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to being able to present additional information to you in the coming months.